Okay, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, sorry, folks. We kind of cut out power outages here in Sri Lanka. So, Shreya, you were in the middle of talking about the different
Yes.
parenting movements. So sorry about the cut off.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead again.
So I just want to say, I think what she was saying is the shifts are basically around safety. That, we as crime increased in the US, or at least we got this feeling of it increasing, we began to kind of hover over our kids. Um, but one of the four stood out to me and really was like, this is the area that I struggle with. And that is, she talked about the scheduling of play. But if I boiled it down to really what it is about, it's the fear of perception, what people are going to think about me. So if I'm at a play group, my kid is there and they're not sharing, I want to jump in and say things I wouldn't say at home because I don't want them to think that I'm not parenting my child correctly. And so I kind of went through the book with that lens, trying to go, what can I glean from this book to help me? And I know that's a struggle, even though my kids are now 24, 22, and 19. And my youngest just finished going through the college acceptance process. And yes, particularly when it comes to those essays, you just fear, what are people going to think about my child? And so I think that's one of the things I want to say in terms of when you're reading this book, really try to hone in on those shifts in parenting. Which one has really driven you to be kind of that helicopter parent? Is it when you feel you're always trying to protect them from being hurt? Or is it that you are hard on them for academics because you fear they won't get to the next level? But because once you can narrow it down to one of those, I think the book is not overwhelming. But I can only imagine if you think, oh, I'm going to do better in all four areas, forget it. Susie, what stuck out most to you?
Well, so on something you were just talking about with the helicopter parenting, um, I think one of the unique aspects of foreign service parenting, which is very different than parenting in the US, is oftentimes we have household help, right? And I don't know about the household help that other people have found in their homes, but we have really only ever had one woman who worked with us who actually would say no to our kids and would actually discipline them in an effective manner. The all of the other ones would, make all of their beds and take all of their dirty dishes to the kitchen and do all of the laundry and basically treat our boys like royal princes. And I do think that this is very much the same for a lot of families. And I think one of the things that she's talking about, Julie's talking about in this book on, let kids learn these things and these skills, these life skills for themselves, is actually kind of complicated when you are living overseas, because you have hired this person to come into your home to do those things. And it's very hard for them to be, well, how do I not do these things for this family member? So this is a very interesting kind of dichotomy that we get stuck into, because you want your kids to learn these skills, but then on the other hand, you have this person in your house that you're paying to do these same things for. So we actually made a very specific decision on this to limit our help inside of the house, purely for the very important reason that we want our kids to develop these life skills for themselves. I want them to learn how to cook. I want them to learn how to do their laundry. I want them to learn how to maintain their rooms and put away their clothes and fold a fitted sheet. Like, all of these things are like important life skills. And I think that it's actually a challenge to accomplish these sorts of life lessons when you are living overseas and you have full-time household help.
I totally agree with you, Susie. And I think, even though this book, she's coming from a college, one who has observed college students and trying to help parents to raise adults, it really starts at the beginning, right? This is a new parent book as well. And it particularly like what you just said, because our kids are, for those of us, some of us come into the Foreign Service, our kids are really young or even just born into this lifestyle, right? So we kind of forget what is kind of age appropriate life skills, so there's no checklist that we're going through. And so to our listeners, I want to say, hey, go to chapter 14 of this book, because I think it's worthwhile to go through that list where she gives, age groups and what life skills they should be doing at that point in their life. And I really agree with you, but we need to be aware, right? Like, when should they fold laundry or become a part of that process? But when we have this house help in the home, I right now feel like I have lost life skills because of the house help. When I go back home, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin with cleaning this house, and so I love this point that you just brought up. So parents, turn to chapter 14, look at that life skills list and start thinking, seeing, can my child do this or not? And just take it one life skill at a time.
So another point I would love to make, Shoya, is that I think that one of the things that she does really well in this book is to really talk about us as parents figuring out what it is that how do we define being happy? And I think that this is a message that our kids pick up just in our interactions and what we say and everything. But I think also it's an important lesson for our kids to understand, because happiness doesn't come from a paycheck or a particular job or attending a particular school. I think it's really important for our kids to realize that, happiness comes from love and from other human beings. And they have it in themselves to the capacity to love others and to love themselves. And they get this unconditional love from their parents. And from that, they can figure out and define for themselves what it is to be happy. It has nothing to do with what school they attend or what however many participation medals they might have on their shelf. It comes from other human beings, which I think is a really important point.
And Susie, again, like I said, this book being a great book for new parents, because it's helping you to recognize, think what you want before you just start delving into grabbing this technique and this and going after this accomplishment or pushing your child towards this, and I know in our work, Susie, with parent coaching, really giving parents that space to just have time and say, what is it that you want to see in yourself? What do you want to bring to your entire family when you show up? What puts the light on your face? What would make you just do the chores that you have to do with a greater sense of ease? And when we have those conversations with our clients, that they begin to recognize, I am doing a lot of things that may be good, but I don't enjoy. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I love about coaching parents, is just to see that moment where they go, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. And we all need that. We all need a time to just pause and say, does this feel good? I know that it's a good idea, but every good idea is not the best for us as a parent to
Exactly.
implement. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do what feels good for you as a parent and for your family. And as you said, just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it's a good idea for you. Maybe it's a good idea later. Maybe it's a good idea like in 5 or so years, but it doesn't mean that it necessarily works for you. And I think that's why it's so important to know like your values and to be able to communicate that with your parenting partner if you're fortunate enough to have that, and with your children so they understand why why my mom doesn't let me do X. And you can tell them, you know, I think that's really fun that other families get to do whatever X is, but that's not something that our family does, and that's okay.
Yeah. And just getting comfortable with that, because like you said, when we work with our clients to get those values on paper, like what really matters. And I'll even share what for me, this one story where I knew I wanted my kids to value education because I'm a former teacher, like, that is priority in our home. But if I dig deep, my deepest core value is kindness. And I remember my son came home with a bad grade, and I thought, I'm going to show him how much I value education. I did something horrific. And I thought back then it was a good idea. I basically told him if he didn't bring home good grades, his future was doomed. I didn't say it in that way, but basically that was the premise. And I told him that, look at this broom. This is what you're going to be pushing if you don't get those grades up. And I remember I had this like air about, I thought it was a good thing I was doing. Like I'm driving him to have motivation. And I remember I went to a friend of mine, she's an older seasoned mother. And I told her this story. She looked at me with such horror. She didn't even have to tell me that that was totally wrong. And here I am. My core value is kindness. But my like fourth value is education. There's other things that I even value more than that, but I know how important education is, right?
Yeah.
But still, it's not my core. It's a good thing, but it's not like the thing that I want to spend most of my time trying to help my child do. And so here I go. I jump over kindness and turn into this mean woman to impress upon my kid that if you get a B in kindergarten, well, whatever number that would be, 2, your future is doomed. And so I think we all have these moments, but look, you can get yourself up. You can, just be in tune that I'm a little over the top in this area, but focus on what do I really want. And at times it's hard because you're trying so hard to quote unquote be successful parents. But I also think listening to other people like my mom, people you value, who you know mean well for you and your children. And my mom would say to me, Sharoya, why are you so like disappointed? My kids would bring home all of the certificates for kindness, being a great citizen, and those types of core value, human qualities. And I was upset because they weren't on the first honor roll. And she really had to deal with me year after year. This would happen. And so there's hope, parents, there's hope.
How long after this conversation that you had with your son about school and how important it is and he can't get a B in kindergarten, did you at that point already identify what your core values were? Did you know that kindness was so much more important to you than education, or had you not taken the time to think about that?
Had not taken the time to think about it. And Susie, that's why I am so adamant, when I first welcome a family in and I'm coaching them, to give them that time and space to really sit there. And I ask a lot of questions, have fun activities for them to do, to think back about their childhood, because that often shapes the value. And then sometimes we don't want something to happen. So we let the fear drive us and say, this is our value. But actually what we're trying to do is avoid the repeat of what happened in our childhood, right? But let me share this too with parents that there is hope, because although I did not set out and say, my value is kindness, when I was reading my son's something he did actually in kindergarten, and you have to go through the ABCs and give a characteristic about yourself. And when it reached K, he says, I am kind, something like, because kindness matters. And so there's room for a lot of failure in parenting. And I will have to say that somehow, along with all of those failures that I made, I can say that I spent a lot of time developing those areas in the kids.
And you should be very proud of yourself as a parent. And I know you didn't do your parenting journey on your own, but it is wonderful, isn't it? When you look at your kids as they're growing up and they're starting to identify themselves in more adult roles and be able to say, wow, did you hear that just come out of that boy's mouth? Like that's coming from my heart. That's my hard work right there.
Yeah. So Susie, I want to put you on the spot. What would you say is your core value? What that you just like, I want my kids to know this?
Not to be a parrot, but kindness is very, very important for me. And kindness and compassion, I think, are two superhero skills that are really very important. And I often reference, commonality and that common humanity. And I think that if we extended more compassion and kindness towards other people and to ourselves, which I think is a very important and difficult thing for people to do, we wouldn't be in these sorts of situations that we are finding ourselves, in different countries battling one another. And it's not as simple as, you do an act of kindness and you pay for the coffee for the next 10 people behind you. But it amplifies, right? Like if you do a kind act, then it can amplify and the next person passes it on and passes it on. And I really try very hard to help my kids understand why it's so important, and different ways that we can extend kindness and compassion towards other people.
Sure. And I think I read a survey one time where it was saying one of the main values that parents have is just they want their kids to be respectful. And it's interesting because when we think about these other areas of safety and academics, we can actually be disrespectful to our kids. So the very thing we want to develop in them, that respect and honoring other people's boundaries, what do we end up doing? We shut them down and, don't give them the proper respect in terms of sometimes how we speak to our kids, sometimes, just giving them freedom and allowing them to explore their boundaries. So I think this book is definitely worth its weight in gold. And there was one thing I want to mention is about the sweet spot. Let's see. I want to give people a cheat sheet. That's chapter 3, folks. And just determining what type of parent you are. Are you authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, neglectful? And so that is worthwhile taking a look at and coming to grips with, here's where I'm strong. Here's where I like to strengthen my parenting style. And it is definitely doable.
Yeah, I think you may have a parenting style that comes naturally, but that doesn't mean that if perhaps you would like to start embracing other qualities of parenting and switch the styles, then it's very doable. She does a good job talking about those different qualities.
Yeah. So parents, in conclusion, we just want to say, the Big Purple Blob is here to support you. We encourage you to reach out to Susie, who is excellent in terms of your developing wellness, families who are mentally and physically well, so she can meet your needs if you are just trying to figure out, how do I balance this thing? I feel like I'm off kilter, and she's a great one to reach out to. I often say I'm the parent coach who, when you are at your wit's end, then come see me. I think this book does a great job in helping parents improve their skills. But then there are times when a book like this would be so overwhelming that there are parents who can't benefit because they already have so much on their plate. And those are the parents that I tend to work with the most. It's those who don't have the capacity to read this type of book. And so we just encourage you all to reach out to us at any time. And this goes for all of us on the Big Purple Blob. You are welcome to go to the website at thebigpurpleblob.com and send us an email. Take care, and we thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.